Why do I do history? I feel like everyone's going to have a different answer to this, but for me, it seems fitting to look to the past, to the wisdom of generations that came before me. My grandfather was somewhat of a historian, a hobbyist, maybe not an academic, but still, he devoured books. And you could tell, based on his bookshelf that sprawled on an entire wall in his living room. And you could tell just by looking at it that his interests varied widely. I was visiting one year on Thanksgiving, and having had my fill of pumpkin pie and social interaction, to be honest, I retreated to this quiet room with the old oak bookshelf. I remember an antique clock was in the corner, ticking away the seconds, and it added a very cool atmosphere that gave every book a kind of weight. I ran my finger down the titles. There were novels, compilations of classic literature, cookbooks, histories, Bibles, engineering handbooks, guides to New Age mysticism, self-help pamphlets. I wondered how anyone could read half as much in a human lifetime. Keep in mind, at this point, I could probably count every book I had ever read on two hands. Later, I actually asked my grandfather, "Have you actually read all those?" And he chuckled at this and said, "No, not even close." Anyways, my finger finally found the thickest, most esoteric looking of the bunch. It was a monstrous volume, its spine 2 or 3 inches thick, its title embossed in metallic gold script, and it said, Nostradamus, the Complete Prophecies. Prophecies, I thought to myself, like magic spells? Had someone hundreds of years ago really foretold the future? Was I in that future? How many of these prophecies had come true? And if the answer to that was anything more than 0, why the heck hadn't I heard of this Nostradamus? At that time in my life, this kind of curiosity was entirely new. As a recent high school graduate with really no long-term plans or ambitions, all of my adolescent energies were directed towards more immediate concerns. How to make money, how to get girls, what kind of trouble my friends were getting into that weekend. But this book, it seemed so much bigger than all of that. I could only imagine what kind of occult secrets lay in here. Perhaps if I read slow enough or paid attention to all the footnotes, I could learn the secret of Nostradamus' prophecies. Maybe then I would know what to do with my own stagnant life. John Haig's Nostradamus, the Complete Prophecies thus became the first work of non-fiction that I would ever read of my own volition. And while I failed in my quest to unlock the secrets of telling the future, I was confronted on every page by just how much I did not know. And by the same token, how much could be known. The bounds were absolutely limitless. Nostradamus wrote his prophecies in verse, groups of 4 lines called quatrains. In his book, Haig looks at each quatrain in turn, doing his best to figure out what historical event the prophet might have been alluding to. Nostradamus' prophecy from August 1555 reads, "The great mastiff, driven out of Paris, will be angered by the alliance. After having chased the stag to the fields, the wolf and the bear will defy each other." Haig interprets the English Mastiff in this passage as Winston Churchill, an admittedly bulldogish-looking guy, during the fall of France to German forces in 1940. He then goes on to speculate that the wolf is Adolf Hitler and the bear is Soviet Russia. Now, while I'm no longer under the delusion that Nostradamus' prophecies were anything more than guesses left intentionally vague, much like a horoscope, they did teach me some crucial things about the nature of history. For one, they show how everything in the past is a matter of interpretation. We might see this passage that we just looked at through the lens of John Haig, that is, through the lens of 20th century conflict. But someone reading this passage 200 years ago, without the context and interpretation of World War II, would have a completely different interpretation. Regardless, I've come to find that recognizing patterns in history is tantamount to a kind of prophecy, isn't it? It's not rooted in occult magic, but in an awareness and understanding of human nature. When we learn what drives us, or what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall, or the lengths that people will go to in the pursuit of wealth or status. We can guess fairly reliably what someone will do when they're put into a similar circumstance. What happens when revolutionaries topple a government without installing a better one? History tells us quite clearly that a strong man will take control and fill that power vacuum. The examples seem to stretch infinitely into the past. What hubris would we have to assume that it wouldn't apply in the future? This is why I study history. To better understand human nature, to appreciate this tremendous scope of human experience, and to use those insights to navigate toward a better future. History books are filled with triumphs and tragedies. When I read, for example, about the horrendous conditions on an Atlantic slave ship or in a Jewish concentration camp, I discover a new appreciation for my freedoms and for my Swedish mattress. Oh, it's so comfy. On the other hand, uplifting tales of heroism or human ingenuity can inspire me to try to nurture those qualities in myself and in others. I suppose that's partly why I became a high school teacher. Today, my bookshelf looks a lot like my grandfather's, minus the cookbooks, and to be honest, I never cared much for Shakespeare. Most of the real estate is occupied by history. No particular brand of it, although I think United States history is a little too recent and close to home to be particularly interesting. I prefer history that offers a window not only into another time, but into another place, somewhere entirely foreign. Yet, the lesson always seems to be that nowhere is as foreign as I expected it to be, because the people there are always more similar than different. After all, they are all human. There is no my history and your history. That can only serve to divide us on superficial lines of race or gender or nationality. I study history because I want to see the larger story, the one that we are all part of, the one that we should all be profoundly eager to read, because the future quite literally depends on it.